So I was looking at the section on Artist Code, that's Unit 2. So I thought through and researched artists who look at using signs, symbols to reflect on culture and personal iconography, etc., particularly through cultural and traditional contexts. So that was the initial form of thinking. Then there was also looking at artists that I also knew or knew of. So where I work is, in fact, this is Quandamooka country. And there are a number of Quandamooka artists. And so Eliza Jane Carmichael, or known as Lisi Carmichael, she's from the Quandamooka area, so she's a Quandamooka saltwater woman. And so it made absolute sense to aim to get in contact with her and find out if she was interested in being involved. And she is, because she's a young Quandamooka woman, she's taking traditional ideas and putting them into these traditional ways of making, but also then putting them into some contemporary forms. And it's of course very strong cultural connections there with her work. Judy Watson is a megastar in Australian art and has been involved in so many great exhibitions. She's and also been involved in a lot of education. We're able to have interviews with her, and I was able to also get access to her book, which is Blood Language, and a number of articles written about her. So it made sense to have both Lisi Carmichael and Judy Watson involved, because also they have worked together on other projects, and they have a very strong Indigenous voice through their work. Abdullah is not Brisbane based, he's Sydney based. Because he is speaking through an Australian Muslim voice, I just thought, again, from a cultural perspective, from Australian perspective, but also from a Muslim perspective, he's able to have, he shows very, very strong symbolism through his work, through photography and painting. Alfredo and Isabelle Akula. I had met Alfredo at the Queensland College of Art. He was doing his doctorate while I was doing my master's. And originally Alfredo and Isabelle are from the Philippines. And again, it made sense for us to be able to have artists from Southeast Asia being involved in through the text. And they're very happy to be involved because both of them were art teachers in the Philippines, and they will aim to support as much as they can in education. So they are bringing to the text a Filipino voice, and their works to do with transience and change, and changing from from living in one country to another. With Glenn Skean, I'd got to know Glenn. We were both doing a Masters at the College of Art, and he moved on to doing his doctorate. And so Glenn's work really brings this European voice into the mix of other artists that I have that are in creative inquiry. And Glenn brings into it he's interested in this, as he calls it, the liminal space between colonisation and today. So there's this space where colonisation has happened and the impact that it's had on Indigenous culture in Australia. And he's very sensitive on how he does this. And Glenn uses a lot of personal symbols through his work. So there's one in particular, which is a black umbrella. And a number of years ago at one of his exhibitions, my wife and I purchased one of his black umbrella works. And later on he told us we were the first to buy one of his works, which we were quite chuffed about. But anyway, I said, what what does the go with the black umbrella? And he goes, well, first of all, it's really associated with European men. You don't tend to find women carrying black umbrellas, and it's also an item that's clearly brought into Australia. And he also said that he purchased his first umbrella, in fact, when he came to Brisbane. So it really was a symbol for him being white, European, male, and living in Brisbane. So Glenn aims to create this mix of lots of symbols and that show both Indigenous and European through his work.